Hi there, I'm Stephanie Cochran, and welcome to Green Shoe Conversations. I'm the executive director for the Green Shoe Foundation, and we are super excited that you guys are joining us today. With me, I have one of my special partners in crime, Mr. Stephen Brinkworth. He's going to be coming on, and here's the best part. I'm turning it completely over to him. So, Steve, you have the show. Thanks for joining us.
Thanks, Stephanie. So June is Men's Health Month, and May was Mental Health Awareness Month. And so we've kind of had a discussion about just continuing that conversation, linking these two together. And so having a discussion about men's mental health as professionals, as men, what are some things that are important to us? What are some things that are important to know? And so I've invited two very special men in my life, Jeff Jones, Mark Gorman, to be here with us, and looking forward to having a dialogue and just kind of connecting and covering some stuff that's sometimes really, really familiar to us, and some that we've experienced as professionals that's familiar in a different way too. So welcome to both of you.
Thank you.
Like to introduce yourself. I'd love for you to introduce who you are.
Mark, I'll let you take it away.
Thanks, Jeff. Thanks a lot.
You're welcome.
Let me see what's there to know. I'm a therapist I live in Oklahoma City, but I'm a therapist with an office in Edmond. And I guess I've been working as a therapist since about 1990 in private practice there in Edmond since 2005. Which I've really enjoyed. And right now I've started my career working with in home-based with at-risk kids, and just learned about a side of life and suffering that was really informative to me, this somewhat entitled kid. And from there, I've worked with youth through a lot of my career, and then now in my solo practice, I just see adults, and mostly I'm informed. I was first trained in, if it means anything to people, narrative therapy, which it's a little technical. Is one of the kind of a constraint release kind of therapy. Is kind of not trying to fix you, but it's trying to find out what restrains you from being who you want to be. And eventually moved on to EMDR, and also now I do a methods called internal family systems, IFS, which is also constraint release, and just thrilled and passionate about that model and working with people and what it can do for me and for people. And for me, IFS, and this goes for most therapists anyway, is part of my journey. It's a journey that I will probably never end as long as I've got some breath on this planet, because I'm not done. But that's that. I think that's me in a nutshell. Yeah.
Awesome. Thanks, Mark. I'm glad you're here.
Thank you,
Jeff.
Well, it all started at University of Central Oklahoma, where I did both degrees, and then, like most of us, I went into the community mental health sector and found myself working with adults and who are facing the intersection of trauma, addiction, homelessness, and legal issues, and certainly untreated mental health. And I found a love for working with those populations that were really underserved. And then in 2016, I had the chance to go back to the campus and work with our counseling center. And our counseling center at UCO serves the student population. And we're also in charge of providing health education and preventive health education, health promotion and training. So I always love these opportunities. And the big focus over the past year has really been, what are we doing for the guys next to us? And answering that question is really complex, and I hope to tackle a bit of that today. But I focus, like Mark, on a couple of different variety of therapies, but I feel like I cut my tooth on some mindfulness-based stuff and became a mindfulness-based clinician pretty quickly, and found myself in the world of ACT and acceptance commitment therapy. I would say that that's my default, that's in my bones. Because of these two wonderful gentlemen, I've been learning more and more about the internal family systems model, and had some incredible experiences with that. And I'm currently working on becoming trained and more informed in that model. And I know that the guys will follow me on this. There's really no mastering this Jedi power that is IFS. It's just continuing to immerse ourselves in it. And what's so beautiful is that we get the opportunity to have a language outside of the grunting and scratching our chests, like IFS, which gives us guys an opportunity to actually really communicate in such a vulnerable way, which is profound, to getting to know ourselves outside of the conditioning that we've been living in. So, but that's me. And I'm also a smart recovery facilitator. So I host a recovery meeting that I've been doing for several years now, and have been really grateful for. But again, I just want to thank Mark and Steve for this opportunity, and thanks for always looking out for me in so many ways.
Appreciate you both. I'm glad you're both here. So I know that in some of these discussions, I've kind of introduced myself too, and I've been with Green Shoe for about 3.5 years. We all kind of cut our teeth in similar places. Started in terms of doing therapy at North Care, but prior to that had been in a retirement community. And so it took a huge shift to go from a rather privileged population that was dealing with grief and loss and aging issues, and to shift to severe mental illness struggles. And that really opened my eyes to trauma, substance abuse, got some of the mindfulness techniques, and just continuing on that journey. And I love the reference to the Jedi mind tricks and inside of ourselves. It so feels like this force.
A lifetime without connection to our intuition, right?
Yeah.
So and that's what feels so I mean, that's how I can put it personally, is just it feels so forceful, because it feels like an area of vulnerability, maybe even a depth, if you will, that we don't have a lot of language in there, do we, in that space? So it feels like something that's moving and something that's forceful. And I really am grateful for the opportunity to run men's groups right now, because I see that force move through the crowd, and see whenever people are feeling it and letting each other know without even saying it that they feel it. And to me, that's Jedi power.
Yeah. And I think it's so cool and bold of you to run those men's groups. I don't think there's a lot around. And yeah, I don't do groups where I work. So I just think it's amazing that you do that, and just a needed asset. You
know, being provided the opportunity through Halo to run these groups, as I tell them, I'm doing it as much as I can for my sake too, because it just feels so taboo just to host something like this, or even to ask other guys to join you, or to come to these things. And you know how it is whenever you are explaining this to a male counterpart. You know, what are we going to do in this group? Well, we're going to talk about our feelings, we're going to talk about our past, we're going to talk about how it changed. And they're like slowly closing the door as you explain it. And
things to not say to a man.
Right. And I think back, it's just so funny. Earlier in our marriage, my I'd go and hang out with one of my guy friends, and my wife would ask me, it's like, so what are they up to these days? And I'd say, I don't know. Well, didn't you ask any questions? No, but you guys were together for a couple hours. And I was like, yeah. And it just made me think, like, there's so much being communicated. We don't have a language for it though. And an overt one, if you will. So I like that. I like, as I tell the guys in the group, I was like, you guys are trendsetters. You guys are coming in here, developing a language and a perspective and a foundation that's going to allow you to create a ripple effect on the men around you, and everyone else for that matter, as we again re-examine masculinity.
That's a
and I'll put it
beautiful piece.
Yeah.
Think about that. stepping in and talking about feelings, doing those things that you were just describing, people shutting the door on, that not only am I sending ripples out into the community and setting trends in terms of changing that dialogue, but I'm also creating a new status quo where it's acceptable for me to be my authentic self. We talked a little earlier about those armaments and how walls get put up that keep us from sharing what's on the inside, and being able to tap into that and put language to it that I know for me growing up as a guy was a struggle to get. What are the words I use to describe what I'm feeling inside? And if they were written, a lot of them would look like asterisks and other things that would be expletives that and yet that doesn't define what it is, but there's this intensity that I'm seeking language to. So having that connection and ability to tap into me and what the language is, to identify what's going on in me and to connect with other men is huge.
Yeah. And a plug in for you, Jeff. I forgot the nice compliment you gave us, but it was something like trendsetters or whatever. But I really like Jedi, though. Let's just go with that.
I might go with that.
Yeah, but you're doing that. If you're doing men's groups, you're on the cutting edge, and when men get the language, when they can see their own inner life and inner world and what they're doing and why they're doing it, they can speak it. They can do this. It's so great that you're there, helping guys find their own language.
And it's so cool how, we just passed week 6 in the 8-week curriculum, so we're pretty further along. But how many of them are talking about how they share it as a way of not only building in mindfulness, but sort of onboarding other people to these concepts so they understand. And so actually what we're doing now is seeing guys seek out understanding and provide now insight into understanding.
Wow.
Which is so powerful for getting in, between our ears, us guys who by and large, for so many reasons, just don't have much to say in terms of emotional pain management. We really don't. There's really not an answer to how guys are supposed to do that. And again, I think it's because that question alone addresses the deficits in emotional understanding. So, and it's not to implicate our male ancestors, because they had even less. But what we're trying to do is just get to the truth of that. I think again, I could come to this meeting and be like, I'm an expert in all these things, but really I find myself showing up wanting to embrace my own vulnerability and my own insecurities in front of them and to them, as a way of like, wow, since we know we're safe. And it's so funny to watch the guys kind of look at each other as a way of kind of knowing, is it okay for me to emote right now? And kind of getting a okay from the crowd. Am I safe? But once we are, and I strongly believe this, once they know what that kind of felt safety is, they will unload or unburden that weight in that backpack that they've been carrying around. And you see the rawness and the vulnerability. And selfishly, I know you were talking me up, Mark, but I go selfishly just so I can experience those, because I feel like it's just continually putting myself back in that lens too. And so for me, it's all about continuing to handle the material.
You mentioned this journey is something that we stay on, and I think growing up, I got messages that there was a beginning and an end to things.
Yeah, you're a man now.
Yeah, there's something I'm supposed to achieve and accomplish to become a man, and yet this journey is never ending.
Right.
There's a lot of messages that we get that oftentimes are don't be or don't do kinds of messages. And I mentioned earlier some of the language we hear if we're doing competitive things like sports, where walk it off, don't cry about it, I'll give you something to cry about, don't be a sissy. There's a lot of different language that gets used that also gives me this non-specific, but yet directed message about who I'm supposed to be, how I'm supposed to engage as a guy. I'm curious where that lands in terms of familiarity for you guys too.
Oh gosh, there's so much there. Yeah. So again, I'm partly informed by a book I've been listening to lately, so I want to, because I'm not an expert at anything except taking the damn journey. But I want to get my head back around this again. So what we're given then is, as we're told, don't be this and don't be a sissy. And we were talking before the call, that we get the stronger word than sissy. We get the P word, which is real powerful, at least for males around here that I know of. And so what we get, we're trained by the other boys. And I guess in turn, we're all trained by our elders, maybe. And I, like Jeff, I don't want to be dissing them, but the legacy gets passed down. Point being that we have to decide, do we get to belong to the group, or do we get to be authentic? And we're getting to decide that before we know the vocabulary for authentic. And so we have to fragment parts of ourselves, hurt parts, vulnerable parts, sensitive parts. We have to exile those parts of ourselves. My mental image is like, this is not as good as Jedi, but my mental image is a cookie cutter. And everything that fits in the cookie cutter that's approved of in our male culture, you get to keep that. But anything that doesn't fit in the cookie cutter gets exiled and put away or lost.
Yeah.
And we don't get to be a whole person. You know, and I think that can be, you know, the masculine tragedy. And that will come back to haunt us.
Absolutely.
That's going to feed depression somewhere down the road.
Yeah. There's a couple pieces that come to mind listening to you talk, that come from Terrence Reel's book. I don't want to talk about it, with those legacies. Oftentimes I'm hearing messages from those people that are my elders that come from their stories and not necessarily mine. And I may not have a context for why it's important for me to know that. And the book starts with a quote. It's an old Yiddish proverb, that the son seeks to remember what the father seeks to forget.
Oh, that's good.
There's a depth in that I absolutely connect to.
Yeah.
There's also a piece of that, thinking about those messages that he speaks to with depression in men, that some of the forces that are present and influence that to even be created are also some of the same forces that help keep it be concealed. And so to stay in kind of an overt or a covert or hidden state where I may not feel like it's safe to express those things, the parts that fall outside the cookie cutter.
Yeah. Yeah. So I was thinking, and you know how I can be really tangential. So Steve, you've got the power here to rein us in. But let me get this again. Where was I going with that? I got lost in the cookie. Oh, I know what I want to speak to. So, we all three of us do trauma work, and so I was thinking about depression, obviously before the call on depression in men in particular, and so So the origins of those, if I want to speak to some of that a little bit, is there's the headliners, which would be trauma, the big, what we call the big T traumas, and so those are typically childhood abuse, or attachment loss in childhood, usually in childhood, and those are pretty obvious to us anyway, maybe to other, the men that are affected by those. And then trauma goes on by degree in that direction. We tend to call small T trauma, but that doesn't mean to minimize the small T's. So I just kind of want to put this out there for any of those guys listening, so that, and this goes to the cookie cutter more. This is the less obvious pain and trauma of the teasing or the mocking or the forced fitting in that we all get. Those are small T's, and we all get small T's, and we're very, very adaptive animals, and we can get over one T at a time sometimes. But when they come in clusters over time, or in an era of, say, for example, the playground teasing or being bullied, those add up to the same repercussion, or very similar repercussions to the guy that got that childhood sexual or physical abuse. So just want to put that out there for anybody. But in both cases, I think, and I want to hear you guys' opinion on this. I think maybe this is shifting, I hope, we're in the world of better communicated mental health and Oprah and so on, is that men with depression, wherever they land on the continuum of this trauma, it's still a shameful thing to have. Don't be weak.
Mm-hmm.
It's perceived as weak. I'm not enough.
Mm-hmm.
So whether they got the big T or the little T end of the continuum, I think it's really hard for men to get help and ask for help, whether it's from a spouse or a therapist.
Yeah, it seems to be this struggle to delineate the difference between performance and humanity. And those sound like pretty dramatic terms, but I use those on purpose just so we understand.
I love your phrasing of that.
Yeah, just so we understand that all of those messages were about performance. That there was no humanity acknowledged in those times. And again, it's a lot of those that keeps ringing in my ears, that our real understanding of masculinity comes from being told what not to do, whether it be to cry or speak up or stand up for the one being teased, go the way of the group, don't disturb the herd. These are all, as you were speaking, small T traumas. And I think the large T trauma that comes up is that we just don't consider men to be capable of this kind of concept or this lifestyle or this even approach. I keep wanting to say vulnerability, but this vulnerability, and I was thinking of something a group member acknowledged, that I guess in this case, one of my small T's was that how quickly I learned that I didn't get affection from dad. Dad wasn't the affectionate one, or I learned that whenever I was in trouble or in need, I went to mom, and this was considered a pretty benign gender role or gender norm for so long. And then the big T trauma in that is that I don't even consider approaching other men in this way or with these vulnerabilities, or even to demonstrate pain or to show pain. I also work with athletes at the campus, and work to build in programming for mental health and athletes, because athletes are so easily confused by their performance, their academic and their physical performance, with their emotional health. To put them all in the same box. And it's something that we're trying to get out there. If your arm is broken and you can't move it, you want to go to the doctor. But for some reason, we apply that same type of grit to emotional well-being for athletes, so much so that they're getting these messages. Well, if I speak up, I could lose my position. If I speak up, I could lose the coach's favor, or I could lose my team's favor, or just people will treat me differently. And I think when we talk about certain groups, whether it be veterans, law enforcement, athletes, or even guys, really, we have to understand that to address these issues of vulnerability, we have to get like big and panoramic with our view. And again, that's why I really come back to that concept of masculinity, and really asking myself, how does that feel today? And what do I even understand in terms of masculinity today?
It's a huge piece to try and wrap my head around of masculinity and what I make of it today. From the message I got, what it means for not only my internal experience, but how I relate with others. And one of the things, not specifically the three of us have talked about, but just as providers, as mental health professionals, I know for myself, the majority of clients that I've seen in various places have been female. And thinking about the messages in terms of my internal experience, my pain, my vulnerability, what it means to be strong, and how that relates to asking for help and what it means to reach out to someone. I noticed for myself, there were a lot of roadblocks to stepping into that journey and feeling like it was safe, looking around and not seeing other guys do that. It felt like I was stepping into unfamiliar territory and not knowing what was going to lead.
Yeah, it's dangerous, vulnerable. Yeah. You're breaking the rules. You're outside the cookie cutter.
Oh yeah.
Right. And you're not going the way of the group. And to impose emotion or impose emotional reaction would disrupt the herd. And there's so many, there's such a sense of that whenever you get into large groups of men, and it's just from the guarding, and that's just something our systems do around each other. I think naturally, even though we are safe, I mean, by and large, safe to do so. But it's so interesting the way, even how in some cases it can feel pretty outdated for us to be talking about emotions in this way, because here we are, therapists who've been working in these capacities for a long time. Yet every time I approach this topic, it's just something that feels new, and it feels something that's like a consciousness that's growing. That okay, I'm aware that I'm in this role, and a big part of what I've been trying to wrap my head around lately is just, when am I in that male role? When am I in that maleness? Even especially, and this is definitely when it comes up, is whenever I'm leading those groups, or I'm about to start a group with all the guys, am I in that space of vulnerability and truth, or am I in some guardedness and not wanting to disappoint them, not wanting to disrupt their comforts and their stuff? And now I've kind of had to get kind of radical in my groups, where I'm kind of poking at the vulnerability. I'm really asking a lot, because in a sense, that's why most of them are there, is to really, challenge me, put me in that vulnerable space.
Yeah, that's huge. That is absolutely huge. As we're looking towards the future, looking towards where that growth goes, I'm curious if there are any pieces that you feel like might be important for men to know about asking for help, or things that may just be important for men to be aware of in regard to mental health, to depression.
Well, go ahead, Jeff.
Oh, well, I would say just I had a part that showed up and was just like, let them know that the guy next to him is struggling too, or suffering too.
Yeah.
That, for so long, that myth that we've got it together, or we need to be self-reliant or any of those things, the person next to us is struggling and suffering too. And I may get that wrong from time to time as I approach other men in this work or in groups, but it's rare. It's rare for me to have that concept that they're carrying pain. They're carrying pain if they've been this far along. And I have kind of an age stratification in my group. So we have people that are just coming out of their adolescence to people who have been more towards middle of their life. So it's so important. We use the concept that the tape's still recording, because so many men, and we spoke to this earlier, show up and feel like they have to be this completedness, this complete man. Like, you're a man now, 18, you got it, you got all that you need, you're fine. So we adopt that concept right away. So as we encounter new information, we have new insights, we discover new things about ourselves, we discover big truths about ourselves, and also that we haven't really dealt with much. We haven't really dealt with much in the course of living our life. And so we use that concept of always under construction, or let the tape keep recording, so you can keep getting new messages, keep getting new understandings, and keep learning. And I think that that's the key. I think it just comes down to seeking opportunities to learn and to question. And again, I can't, as you guys know, can't promote the community-based groups enough. Because we're actually doing something that's pretty taboo, and asking guys to just get together and talk about these things. But it's so cool that every time somebody comes in, when I ask them what their why is for being in the group, they say, I want to leave the world a better place. I not only want to be better for me, I want to leave it a better place. I want to be better for other people. By the end of group, they're talking about so much more, like living in my truth, abandoning or unhooking all this conditioning, unsubscribing from these messages, being my true self, which then takes on this really fierce energy. And that's, again, just one of the things that I love. So I would say just keep learning and to seek out as much opportunity as you can.
That's beautiful. Thanks, Jeff.
Along that same line, I'll just put in a plug in for the work we do. And we were talking before we started the call, but we're talking about mental health has had some negative connotations, but it really, this work, whether it's with a mental health professional or just a really good mentor, it's about getting clarity of what's within me. I've got it's practical mindfulness. It's not necessarily sitting on the pillow mindfulness, which is cool if you can do it, but I've developed a lifetime of protection from getting mocked and shamed and abandoned and betrayed and exiled and so on. And all of that protection is with me, even though those occasions may be behind me now. The protectors, as we call them in IFS, are still alive and well. And until I can do a little mindfulness U-turn and put some light in there, I don't know they're there. And they're just going to keep firing off, and I'm going to keep pushing people away, or I'm going to react with anger, or I'm going to react with shame, or whatever. And until I can do the mindful piece of this, however that looks in a therapy or with a conversation or a group, and then I can stop reacting, and then I can start being authentic. That's my desire for myself, is just be authentic. Yeah. And I'm imperfectly there, yeah. And a few occasional moments when I get 100% there, it's a big day.
Walking and chewing gum, right, Mark?
Yeah, that's right.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
But I aspire to that. And so I think we're living in the dark, and we're walking around with electrodes inside of us. We're running into those electrodes until we can get the light on. And then I can be myself. And then I can ask all those protectors to step back and let the light shine. And it works. We may have different little avenues that the three of us work in, but they all do the same thing. They go the same direction, and they bring awareness to what's going on. And instead of being automatically reactive to whatever external stimuli there is, now I get to have choice.
Yeah.
You know, whether it's my wife has a offhanded criticism, and in case she listens to this, she never does criticize me. She's perfect, but thought I better get that in there. But you know, say if she did, I'm going to have an automatic reaction to that until I'm awake, until I wake up, and then she still might zing it. But now I know, oh, that's what that is. What's it trying to do for me? You think I could just ask that to step back and be me and be light, and I may still have to challenge her about that. But and the work we do, and Green Shoe does this. I'll put a plug in for them, man. You guys rock. This is what you do. You just open that up to people. And what I hear in a very loving and professional way. You know, and I know Jeff does that too. So do I. You know, so and people can find out, men can find out, or all people can find out, you know, what are all the reactions from, including depression. Depression can be a protection too, by the way. And we can find out what that's all about and then heal those pieces of us in a very kind and loving way. Yeah.
I think keeping those lights on, having that awareness is huge. Just like Jeff was mentioning, keep the tape running. I get to make new tapes. I don't have to listen to the same old ones over and over again. And that we've got this opportunity to keep that momentum up. And one of the things that we did over quarantine, we started having what were titled Better Conversations. And so similar to what we're doing here, sitting down as guys, having a discussion about stuff that I was taught not to have a discussion about with guys. This is part of setting that trend and getting that momentum moving forward. And I would encourage those of you that have watched this, go out and have those conversations, dig in a little deeper, get in touch with what's inside and get to know who you're really with. There's a lot of us that haven't had that opportunity to talk about that internal experience and to really voice what it's been like to live with some of those expectations, some of those pains, some of those messages about who I'm supposed to be, and to be able to tap into our authentic self and really, really live that authentic life. So, yeah, gentlemen, great conversation. I really appreciate both of you being here.
Thank you.
Is there anything that either wanted to close with before we sign off today?
Again, you guys put it so great. I think the three of us could probably keep talking for hours and hours. So it's so awesome. That's the energy. That's the force right there. That once we do tap into it. But and Steve, I know that you do a lot of this work. We spoke to it a minute ago. You may be listening right now, a guy listening right now. We're talking about mental health or mental illness, and like Mark, I hate these terms. I think really what we're doing, the truth of what we're doing, is reconnecting you to your body, and we're healing nervous systems, nervous systems that have gone largely untreated, unhealed for a long time. And I hope that any guys listening right now, to find your safe person, find your safe space, and start doing that healing, because it matters. Your healing matters, and it's going to make a tremendous difference in the world. And certainly to anyone listening, thank you for taking time to do this and to listen to these things and to be open to them.
Thanks.
Yeah,
Jeff.
just kind of tagging on to Jeff there is just that, just reminding me that again, this healing work is, you know, we're changing the brain, you know, and we're getting off automatic. Yeah.
Thank you both so much. I love getting to see you guys.
Me too.
Both of you, and this is excellent to have this discussion, and look forward to many more with both of you. So
yeah, thank you.
Thank you.
For all of you listening, thank you for being here. I really appreciate it. You guys go out and have a great rest of your day, and we will see you next time here at the Green Shoe Conversations.